And there is a big need for a big social vision. And arts should claim to be a part of that and very publicly do so, and also connect its struggle to other sectors. Because I think if we are an avant-garde in any way today, it's the avant-garde of flex work. It's the avant-garde of precarity. In the Netherlands, we have the highest percentage of freelancers of all sectors. Right, but we're sharing all of the burdens with the Deliveroo riders. We're sharing them with flex work cleaners and gig workers. So I think we need public imagination and statements to connect those social struggles and demand self-organize, but also demand better regulation and support for different types of precarious workers.
Let's begin. Hello.
Hello.
So we are here at the Void, organized by Institute of Network Cultures. My name is Maisa Imamović. I squat the INC office. I am an artist, a cultural worker, a writer, a web developer, an artist again. Precarious worker is the umbrella term that I like to identify myself under. I recently, I'm also a freelancer. That's how
Wasn't
I
it
operate.
obvious?
Yeah. And our first guest, Sepp Eckenhaussen, is also part of the team, of the INC team, who is also, you will introduce yourself briefly, but you're also a good friend of mine and a neighbor.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here together. I'm currently a researcher at the Institute of Network Cultures and co-director of Platform Beeldende Kunst, Platform for Visual Arts, which is an active think tank, as we say. So we research we research the role of art in society and take action for a better art policy. And that's also the kind of topics I'm interested in here at the Institute of Network Cultures, where we have the research program Our Creative Reset, where we look at the structural changes in the cultural sector through and after the COVID crisis.
Beautiful. Well, I recently listened to the lecture that you gave first at, I forgot where.
Het resort in Groningen.
Yeah. And I also took some notes about it, and it's basically about quotes about rise and fall of the social art policy in the Netherlands after Second World War, but also like how to take control over working conditions under neoliberal rule. And then also like it dawned on me only like I think 2 months ago I learned that there was this UBI system for artists until what I remember 2004 in the Netherlands, but that date might be wrong. So I was wondering if we can also cover the history of social or the art policy.
Yeah, I think it's great to delve a little bit deeper into the history, because I mean, right now it's just so obvious that the position of art workers is so bad. And during the COVID pandemic, there was just money thrown into the art sector, but it just, was then done with a trickle-down idea. Okay, we'll just throw it at the top and it will trickle down to the freelancers and they'll also get their share, which just didn't happen. And it's so many of the time that art workers are just at the worst position, taking the worst blows of a bad situation. But then there was also something like the Tozo in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah.
That I know you also enjoyed for a little bit, which was kind of like a government subsidy that, it wasn't much, but it pulled artists and other freelancers through with like 1,000 euros per month. Yeah. And some people were like, oh, this is like a taste of basic income.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's true. And that's interesting because actually for the longest time since the Second World War, we had something. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't exactly basic income, but very close to basic income for artists. And it was an integral part of the social welfare state. So it would be nice to like delve into that and see what we can take today as an inspiration from that.
Yeah, and I would be very curious too. You brought some books, two books, that we can look at the examples of the artworks that were collected, because the allowance was allowed when you also contribute with an artwork to the government.
Right. Yeah. So maybe I should just start with a very short introduction of what this like semi UBI for artists was. So if we go back to the period just after the Second World War, you see the rise of the so-called welfare state in the Netherlands, which was basically that a lot of social groups were acknowledged to have large social value, but a bit harder economic positions. So you got all of these different schemes like student loans, government pension for people over 65,
scholarship,
children's subsidy for parents, and so within this like broad spectrum of social measures, also the artists got their share, let's say. In 1914, I have the list here. So in 1949, the government rolled out, under the pressure of the Artists Association, they rolled out the contraprestatieregeling, so the counter-performance scheme, which is basically, if you're an artist, if you're acknowledged to be a visual artist, professional one, you give one work of art every now and then in return for that, you get government welfare. So you get whatever anyone else unemployed gets, but you don't have to actually look for other jobs. You can just have your artist practice. You can even make money to the side. And in return, so actually the state would buy up your work in return for government subsidy.
So you get it after you contribute with an artwork?
No,
like,
so you...
Or does it work like a monthly allowance?
Yes, it's a monthly allowance, exactly. And how it would work is you would actually like enter into an office where there's like a table with like old white man behind it, judging if you are artist enough. And then if you would pass, you would be in the scheme.
Yeah.
At first for an unlimited amount of time. Then later, so in 1956, the contraprestatieregeling was turned into the famous name that we now know all of these different schemes under, the BKR, Beeldende Kunstenaarsregeling, the visual arts scheme. So that was like, they would just buy up your work and you could stay in that basically forever.
Wow, and you don't have to like prove it after a certain amount of time that you're still an artist.
You don't have to go to the commission again, but I mean, you prove it, of course, by giving your artwork every now and then. And the state was actually building up like this incredible collection. They had 200,000 artworks at some point that they didn't really have a goal for.
Yeah.
So they didn't really know how to structure this, and the depots were filling up, and it was getting too full. And then at some point they decided, okay, we're going to cut out that counter performance part. So in 1972 they made it a bit more restrictive, and they put it out of action in 1987, when actually a lot of money that was first going directly to artists was in like midway through the 1980s under the first neoliberal government went to institutions instead under the name of professionalization. And then artists could, just like any other citizen, get government welfare.
Yeah.
But in practice that didn't work, so they reintroduced some other kind of scheme, which they called the Wet, Werk en Inkomenkunstenaars, which is kind of the same as the BKR, but just you didn't have to give your artwork, and it was only for a limited amount of time. So basically, if you would graduate from the Art Academy in 2007, for I think like 2 years within the next 5 years or something like that, you could get the same kind of subsidy, which would kind of boost you to find your own way into the art system.
Yeah.
And then in 2012, all of these schemes were cut completely.
2012, not 2004.
No, 2012. So under the first Rutte administration, right, which took seat in 2011.
Yeah.
So Rutte, for maybe people who don't know, we are currently under the fourth Rutte administration. So government headed by the liberals in the Netherlands, who are infamously instrumentalizing culture and undermining its intrinsic value.
Yeah.
And under the first of those administrations, there was a budget cut of 200 million euros per year on the cultural budget. So a quarter, basically, was just slashed.
Wow. Do you have any information about the criteria that, like, what makes you eligible for the, or like criteria of the assessment, like how to get into the scheme as an artist? How was that? How was the artwork judged?
Oh shit, I don't know actually. I mean, I know that it was done by this commission. I know that it was mainly artists that went to art academies that got it.
Yeah.
So I guess that one of the things would be like, are you autonomous, and does your work have artistic quality? I think it was really that basic, that traditional vision of what art is supposed to be. Like it's free, it's not so political, it's like it's aesthetic. So yeah, that kind of discourse around it. So I mean, the idea behind the scheme was really supporting a group and their social function, and that social function was thought to be like, okay, if we want to have a free and a resilient society, then we need also autonomous artists. So it was really with this idea of like free art. And later in the 70s, 80s, it was even said like this is like anti-communist, not propaganda, but like it helps keeping down the communist sentiments in the Netherlands, to have this open, like the liberal idea, right? An interesting thing is that if you look at the literature, if you go back, then people were getting more and more annoyed actually at the BKR. Because it was felt like it was giving artists some kind of like exclusive position that others didn't have. And actually it was also said that it was like promoting mediocre art. Because if you just get money like that, and you don't have to perform. Right? You can just give whatever artwork. It was like supporting mediocre production. But we can have a look. So
that's what I actually want. I was thinking if we can also take this as if we are the jury and take this as an assessment and judge the artworks to see if they're mediocre or autonomous.
Okay, but then maybe I have to introduce a little bit. Like I brought 2 books here. I mean, we're in a podcast, so I know that some of you can't see it, but for those who are looking at the podcast, I can show you these 2 books. So one is Second Opinion about visual art subsidies in the Netherlands, which was published by NAI Uitgevers en de Mondriaan Stichting and Fonds BKVB. In let me check, I think 2009 or something, 7 even. So like 5 years before it was really like finally cut. And here you can really see like it's different. It's essays by different people from the arts, but like prominent people, and they're all so annoyed at the BKR. And then just 2 years ago, 2020. You get this new book, so let's say 8 years after the last remnant of the BKR was cut. It's called A Monument for the Visual Arts Scheme, the history of a spraakmakende kunstenaarsregeling. Spraakmakend, how would you translate that?
Conversation
provoking,
exactly. Conversation triggering.
1949, 1987. So really focusing on that period when art was really bought, and actually making a monument for that, and showing all these artworks that are like, oh, look at what great art we now have in the state collection. Thereby not really acknowledging that this is just a few of the works, and a lot of them are still held in storage, like in detrimental state, but also that it was not really about the artwork, right? It was about supporting the social group artist. But anyway, okay, we can have a look at like
And you also have some documentation or like something to show me about where they're stored.
Yes, I'll show you later. Let's look at this first.
Okay. 1950s, so it starts from there.
Yeah, so what the book basically does, it shows like 1 page more or less per year, and then shows one artwork from that year. that was donated to the state in the. So we start here with the Karel Appel, right? So it's like really like, okay, like blue chip artists. Here we go. So we have a Karel Appel thanks to the BKR in our state collection.
Setting up the standards.
Yeah. So it's called Karel Appel, Lucht en Mensen 1948. So Air and People 1948. Oil and Canvas. Like over a square meter.
Shall we show it to the ones who are looking?
Yeah. It's the one on the viewer's right. And so we can also see where the work is now, right? It's now uitgeleid aan Schunk Glaspaleis. Ever heard of the Schunk Glaspaleis?
No.
Me neither. So I mean the
wow, actually this is what I want to know more about. The locations where they're currently at. And then we have Johan Paulet, Liggende Vrouwenfiguur, 1933.
Reclining woman. So it's
in bronze, and now it's
sculpture.
It's a sculpture, and now it's to be found in Johan Paulet's studio, I guess. Or what is Erven?
No, Erven is the heirs. So I guess, so what happened with a lot of these artworks is that they were collected by the state, but then later they were uncollected again.
Yeah.
Because so you have to imagine the state was just buying up thousands or hundreds of thousands of artworks without having a goal with them. So without having a purpose. So at some point they made the Kunstuitleen. Do you know of that?
No, like
So everyone living in the Netherlands could like you get a subscription to the library, you could get like an art library subscription, and you could go to your local Kunstuitleen art library and get an artwork that you would hang on the wall for a little while and then bring it back
like
and change it for exactly.
And so that's what it means to uncollect, or like what
no,
they meant
so that's one purpose they found for it. But then later, most of those Kunstuitleen they closed.
Yeah.
And this they were like, okay, what can we do? And they decided they should first try to give the artworks back to the artist or their heirs.
They were not interested.
Then try to sell them off.
Yeah.
And if that is not, they can't manage to do that, they can destroy the artwork in the end. So I think in this case, probably they managed to give it back to the heirs of the original artist.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. And people would lend them actually and exchange them. Is there any statistics of that?
Yeah, I'm sure there's. I don't know that now. How many were borrowed out and brought back? I mean, I know that like as a child in my home, it was very normal to go to the Kunstuitleen and pick a work of art. Even with my elementary school, we did it. You know, we would like collectively go and like pick the artwork that would be in the aula for a year, and then it would be. So yeah, it really also worked to bring this art like in social contexts, not just in private homes, but also in public institutions.
I'm just wondering, like, for what occasions would you actually lend a piece of art?
Just above your couch, right? I mean, you don't need it. You're an artist, but I mean, like, how would it be for you if like people could go to this art library and just pick your work and put it above their couch for a year and then bring it back?
I don't know actually how I would feel about that. That's why I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Also, like, I guess there's a bigger sense of need for ownership today. That if I would want to like lend an art, I would also want to own it forever, you know?
Right. Yeah, but I mean...
But actually, I really like this much better, like this habit of like, okay, because I also do have this urge to replace my posters once in a while, you know, in the apartment, and not just like have this constant one object on the wall, you know?
Yeah.
But still, I don't...
So then, of course, like, are we reducing art to a poster?
Yeah.
I mean, partly, I guess. I mean, it's decoration, but it's also something we're all sharing in something that we collectively own, right? If it's paid for by tax money, we own it together.
Yeah. That's nice.
I like. Yeah. Shall we go through a few more? Left we have J.C.J. van der Heijden, Cross, 1966, 1967. So deep in the hippie era, this work was bought by the Dutch state from the artist. I also don't know this artist.
But it doesn't say where it's now.
No, it's
so maybe
acrylic on acrylic. Yeah, I mean, no. No. Actually, because all of these works were brought together in one exhibition 2 years. So this is the catalog of the exhibition. What is your general impression when you look at these different?
I mean, everything that I saw until now is paintings. So I'm trying to get. Oh, this is interesting. Trying to get more. So we have Fritz Prinz Sondertitel Armband.
Yeah,
1975. Uitgeleend aan Coda. So
it's borrowed out to Coda in Apeldoorn Museum. And then opposite from that, we have landscape, a video artwork.
That's interesting, but it doesn't say where it ended up. No, but it's mainly paintings and drawings, actually.
Yeah, I guess as we proceed through time, the different types of media will become a little bit more mixed.
There's more jewelry and sculptures. Well, not really jewelry. Jewelry-like objects.
Okay, so you came to the Netherlands from Bosnia, right? So
yes.
Do you feel like this gives you some kind of insight? Yeah. So we also have like conceptual art here. Do you feel like it gives you some kind of insight in like Dutch art history? I mean, maybe to describe this to the listener, it's a broom with 3 sticks instead of 1. And a sign attached to it saying "Samen sterk iedereen werk." So strong together, work for everyone.
Yeah.
It's called "Samen sterk iedereen werk" by Hans Citroen, 1983.
Shall we show it?
Yeah. I mean, what like?
It does definitely give me an insight, but we're also like scanning very fast through it. So I'm like trying to first understand where they ended up, you know? I don't really have this immediate... but now that you ask me, I don't really have this connection to time in a way. What an answer. Oh my God.
Yeah, so what strikes me when I look at this is they really picked out the prime pieces, right? They really picked out beautiful striking pieces.
It feels like that I'm like, it's a very fine selection of things.
Highly curated.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm really curious about also like the scamming methods, you know? Like I can also imagine that some artists would claim something to be art as well, whether or not it was art for them. And then like, again, like it links me back to this criteria that I'm like, how could they actually rate? Because if they rated what is Kava today, like how they rate like the working hours that you have per week and then a portfolio and materials and all these descriptions.
Yeah.
I'm really curious like to know more how it worked back in the day.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we have to now put into perspective is like the artists that gave these artworks never realized that they maybe thought of, okay, I'll give it and then it's borrowed out to people for in their homes. So that's actually some kind of serious purpose. But they never thought of this exhibition, of course. But like actually most of those artworks ended up in a completely different context. I can show you.
I'm very curious about that.
So most of them were really almost never really seen. But they just ended up like this.
Yeah.
So in huge storage facilities, hanging on racks or like in kind of like wooden container constructions. And this is a picture from 2015, BKR's Art in Storage from the National News broadcast. And the title of the article was at least 42,000 artworks in municipal cellars.
Because the rest couldn't fit.
No, that means that out of the 200,000, they managed to get rid of 160,000, but they still had 42,000 only 7 years ago. And I'm sure that many of those are still in the municipal collections. Yeah. Because that's how it worked. You wouldn't actually directly sell to the national state, but these commissions and all this system was delegated to the municipalities. So that's also where these collections were. So yeah, I mean, you can imagine that a lot of artists were like, you know, if my art is going to be like this, and I'm not going to give my best pieces to be put in some kind of storage, right? So in that sense, it didn't incentivize the greatest art production. But so yeah, it wasn't thought through very well. And those later schemes then were thought through much better.
Yeah. But can you access these storages actually as a visitor today?
There is not a structural way to do so. I'm sure that if you send an email to your municipality, that maybe you can make an appointment to go and visit. Probably depends on the municipality, but no, these are not structurally meant to be visited by the public.
And is there any information what they plan to do with it and with the collection in the future?
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So they're trying now to still reach the artists or the heirs. And in the end, if they really can't, then they will destroy works of art.
Yeah. So we also wanted to cover the future.
Yeah.
Of future perspectives and dreams of post-precarity.
Yeah.
I took a lot of notes from your lecture. When I listened to the lecture, you made very interesting points, kind of like just more like open thoughts. And one of them was also to make more public statements. And I kind of wanted to talk about that because I don't know, also I guess in relation to what's happening currently after the Ukrainian war and a lot of opinion production. And a lot of it fighting, but then a lot of fighting actually for UBI and also like kind of like as users, how do we perceive public statements, you know? That's like, how are they effective actually in 2022?
Yeah, so I mean, for sure, I think that the arts sector in the Netherlands, but also beyond, is always gets the accusation of not being very always gets the accusation of not being very organized, and this is true to some extent. But the problem is we always need to call upon or like use again and again and again the power of imagination, the power of the image, because we are image makers, right? We own imagination. That's how we're being perceived as a cultural sector. So this is the point I was trying to make, is like, it's also so hard, right?
Yeah.
So we need this kind of public statements. But looking at the BKR today is very important, is because it can provoke two types of reactions. It can provoke nostalgia.
Yeah.
And this is what you see with a lot of older generation artists. Like, they're really glorifying the time when they could still make arts, be acknowledged and appreciated as artists and in their free autonomous practice.
Yeah.
And this is something we didn't cover now, but I think the idea of autonomy is still around, but it really, as a social function, it really changed.
Yeah.
And it's true. That's not being appreciated as it was in those times, because we live in different times.
Yeah.
So you can be nostalgic and say, we artists, we're always like at the end of the butt of the joke, and but we can also look at it and see, okay, this was part of a large social program, one of many schemes for fighting precarity in the time of Reconstruction after the Second World War. And in a way, we're in a time of reconstruction again. I mean, obviously after COVID, but now what is happening in Ukraine is adding to the stack of crises. We have the climate crisis. I mean, there is a lot of rebuilding to be done, and there is a big need for a big social vision. And arts should claim to be a part of that and very publicly do so, and also connect its struggle to other sectors. Because I think if we are an avant-garde in any way today, it's the avant-garde of flex work. It's the avant-garde of precarity. In the Netherlands, we have the highest percentage of freelancers of all sectors.
Yeah.
Right, but we're sharing all of the burdens with the Deliveroo riders. We're sharing them with flex work cleaners and gig workers. So I think we need public imagination and statements to connect those social struggles and demand self-organize, but also demand better regulation and support for different types of precarious workers.
And do you have like any opinion about the shift of work again, like flexibilization of cultural worker during the pandemic. Like, how did these practices change? A lot of my peers went for full-time jobs, and then also a lot of people that I know who have full-time jobs have started experimenting with art making.
Yeah.
So like I also see this like complete merge of the two practices, more like the full-time and the flexible worker.
Right. Yeah, and now we actually are approaching the notion of autonomy today, I think, and I think it's really tied to this idea of what they call the hybrid practice. So, in the time of the BKR, you had your free space, your studio where you would make your art. That would be your social legitimacy, and you could get money for that. Not a lot, but you could come by. Today, it doesn't work like that anymore. You can still have your studio and your free space as long as next to that, you also have your lucrative practice.
Yeah.
So you can be a coder and an artist if at least you make in your coding time enough money to accommodate for your own artistic practice. And I mean, in that sense, it almost becomes like, during the pandemic, you start baking bread or gardening or making art in your extra free time because you're not meeting friends, etc.
Yeah.
But it also goes the other way around. You start from your art practice also. Of course, artists are always teachers, but you can also start, I don't know, going into advertisement or copy editing, gig work.
Yeah.
So I think that we see a further normalization of this hybrid practice, and this is even from the government's side supported in the sense that they say we embrace fair practice, which means you don't have to get all of your income from the cultural sector, but the work that you do in the cultural sector has to be paid fairly. In other words, yes, we should normalize hybrid practices.
Yeah.
For me, this really is the structural change in the labor market during the pandemic, which of course brings the question, is art then really only as legitimate as any other hobby?
Yeah.
Or does it have some greater value?
I was thinking actually when I was listening how you describe hybrid practices, I was imagining hybrid formats of art, more hybrid formats of art rather than, or like as a preference, thinking about new practices that like, can there be new practices that for which we can settle full time and that are also like lucrative enough or like inspirational enough that we don't have to do the hybrid practices or like this.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean,
flexible work.
Some artists accidentally get rich. It happens, right? I mean, it's not a problem.
But that is
like,
not
good,
just
good
like,
on them.
That is not just like full-time art or full-time working in a company,
Yeah, I mean, there's this whole bunch of new models. I mean, so there's few artists who get rich by selling their art, so they have a free practice.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, free at least of government subsidy, or the necessity of doing other jobs. But there's Patreon subscriptions, there's YouTube content creators, there's a whole bunch of new online. I mean, there's NFTs, obviously.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of new online money-making models, but I mean, I don't think that they are necessarily emancipating in the sense that, of course, we can connect people through those practices and then build social security systems that the government is failing to provide. But it remains the fact that autonomy in this sense means you just sort it out with the market by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? There's no social function there. I would say that collective practice that really have radical potential really seek out the connection between the arts and other social functions like healthcare workers, cleaning, service industries. And I think the future of collective practice is in that direction.
Yeah.
But maybe can we dig a little, like for a few minutes, into this idea of autonomy? Are you attached to the idea of autonomy as an artist?
Less and less, actually. Yeah.
Because to me, honestly, autonomy is like the monster of Frankenstein, right? It should be dead. Like technically, it should be dead by a long time. But still, it gets these electric shocks, and it stands up and starts walking again because people just are attached to it so much. So at first, I really wanted to get
like cool artists. You mean to the idea of them being autonomous and fighting for exposing their practices as avant-garde or like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that it's the most simple way of protecting your art against instrumentalization.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I tell you, oh, you're an artist, so you just make the world more beautiful, or oh, you help the energy transition go smoother, or oh, you can tell companies how to deal with communication crises. No, that's not what art is about, right? Yeah. It's something more. Then maybe autonomy comes in there as like, okay, that's what I have extra.
Yeah.
I guess that's an idea, but. Yeah, I mean, I actually find it more interesting to hear from your practice perspective. Like, what does autonomy mean to you? Anything like, and can you also trace back like graduating from art academy? Did you feel attached to?
Yeah,
autonomy?
I mean, I was actually like for me, it's very related to the talent, and then what is talent? I think that's also like a very important question today in art. That's like. I don't know, I think since last year I've been talking about it and hearing that like talent is actually just having a routine and working on it, and then there is a point in your art practice when you become talented, if you keep on doing it. And I think that's also kind of like merges with my idea of autonomy, because for me it's always kind of like, this unique practice of art in which kind of like, I don't know if it's related to the time that you put in it or to the skills that you have or like how you combine these skills. But I think in the end, it always comes down to the funding bodies, that is kind of like always defined by the criteria of the funding, So in that case, like for me, I don't really see so many examples of autonomy in the art practice. And I wouldn't also know if I would have an example of an artwork that relates to the term.
Yeah. I mean, it's of course it's a question of I'm pulling up this illustration by Jordi, which I think is really great. It's like it says, autonomous artist, please choose your preferred dependency: government, sponsor, public funding, client, rich parents, or gallery. Yeah, of course. Like, and this is exactly the kind of formal critique why I always thought, what the hell are we talking about? This autonomy is a kind of American dreaming, right? No one is independent.
Yeah,
we are all dependent on each other. That's what it means to be a social human being. But then why? Because like that. Another question: do you find that your peers, like people you study with and that are making art now, do you talk about autonomy at all?
No.
Huh?
We talk about talent.
You do talk about
but really autonomous, I think we joke about autonomous as like something that you need to have as an artist when you apply for fundings. And then we often talk about like, what do we have to do to fulfill that criteria and if we are applying for funding, So in that case, like how you can
autonomy is like an asset that you
get. That like you work towards it actually.
So your preferred dependency includes autonomy.
Yeah.
Or the image of autonomy, at least.
No, but actually it's really a joke for me, like this word. Really is. That is kind of like, I don't take it seriously, but I do kind of like think about the ways. I mean, I'm also not applying for fundings, so I think that in that sense it's different. But I do talk to my friends who are applying for fundings, and when we talk about the criteria that like you have to be autonomous, we talk about how do we prove that, So in that case, it's kind of like making a website is as an extension, or like making a unique website. A website can be autonomous more than art practice. That's how I think more.
And there's one other aspect of autonomy. It's like there's this idea like, as an artist, you don't care about money because you're autonomous. So you don't do it for anything like you make art for art's sake, not anything outside of the art. So this could also be a way of defining the autonomy.
But then what is the content of autonomy, in an art practice. Because I also feel like that comes from merging different skills and practice and making kind of like a hybrid format.
Yeah, I guess it's defining a practice by itself, by what it needs.
Yeah.
Right? That you don't paint for the market or for the government, but for what you feel you need to draw right now.
Yeah, exactly. But that also is so hard to prove as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also even pointless to even try.
There's still the tension, because you would never say I'm drawing this now because this is what the government expects of me.
But
right?
I do have, for example, when I'm drawing, it's the one practice it's one habit in my practice, or one art practice within my whole art practice, that I don't count the hours. And then I refrain from calling it work. And I'm also like, I know that it will not ever be attached to fundings. Yeah. I also don't believe fully in that it will never be attached to fundings, but that kind of for me feels like the most autonomous or the most liberating part of my practice, drawing. And I kind of don't want to put it in these structures of like define it by the criteria of the funding, or how much I would charge for a drawing if I would actually count the hours that it took me to draw one, you know?
Square centimeter prices, stuff like that. Yeah, it's unresolved for me, because I feel it so much, like this radical refusal of quantifying. At the other hand, it's also this is exactly the tool that is being used to subjugate artists so often. Like Hans Abing wrote this book, Why Are Artists Poor, where he's like defining the art ethos. It's like because you're an artist, you don't care about money.
Yeah.
But it also goes the other way around. If you care about money, then you're not an artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like it's the real deal shows by not being so caught up with money.
You have to prove that you're poor and hide your money.
Yeah, so like, but that can also then be used as a tool of government, right? Okay, but you're autonomous, right? So, you know, then you don't need money.
Yeah, exactly.
You're living your dream.
Yeah. There's also, I think, sadness has to do a lot with defining what it means to be an artist. No, actually, I'm not going to go into that. It's going to take so long. Oh my God. Cut.